If I could tell you, hey, I can help you live 20 years longer, that's 20 more years your money can compound, right? If I could give you an extra hour or 2 hours in your day, that's time that you can listen to this podcast with Dave. That's time that you can read a book, that you could look at different investment strategies. So what I would say is that let me help you prioritize your time.
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
How's it going, everyone? And welcome to today's show on Wealth Strategy Secrets. We've got another awesome show for you guys today. Today, we're joined by Chris Larsen. Chris is the founder and principal of Next Level Income, and he transitioned from an 18-year career in the medical device space to dedicating his time to assisting others in achieving financial independence through education and investment opportunities. With over 20 years of experience in real estate investment and management, Chris began his journey by purchasing his single-family rental at the age of 21 while pursuing degrees in biomechanical engineering and finance at Virginia Tech. Over the years, he diversified his investments into development, private lending, distressed debt acquisition, commercial office, and syndicating commercial properties, amassing over $1 billion in real estate acquisitions since 2016. Hope you enjoy the show. Chris, welcome to the show.
Dave, great to see you as always.
Yeah, 100%. Really looking forward to the discussion today. I know the audience is going to enjoy this one as long as we can keep the banter about cycling.
I know. I was like, we're going to talk bikes, right?
Right. No, that's inside terminology, but I have been tracking the Giro, and it's been entertaining as always this year.
Absolutely. That's probably my favorite race to watch all year.
Yeah, for sure. So Chris, tell us a little bit about, your background, how you got into investing, how you got to where you are today with Next Level Income.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, Dave. And I know we have a lot of similarities. When we first got introduced, I'll never forget that our mutual friend said, "How do you not know this guy? You guys are you're like brothers, like copies of each other." And I took that more as like kindred spirits, and it's, having you on our podcast, Next Level Income show was awesome, Dave, hearing your philosophy. And what I like about that is we came to the same conclusion through different paths. So my path, I bought my first property at 21 in 1999. I was actually speaking to a group yesterday. And I was doing the math. I'm like, wow, that's 25 years ago. And I'll be, how old am I today? I'll be 46.
Yeah, you're dating yourself.
Yeah,
right?
I'll be 46 this year. So, nice. I was 21 years old. So much more at this point than half my life ago. But the reason I bought that property, I think, is the important thing. And I just heard, it is a tragic story. There was a young man that died in a car crash from the high school that my son's going to be attending next year. And I was just recounting that story with my wife in the car, actually, after lunch today on the way back to record this. And it made me tear up a little bit because I lost my best friend in college, and he was 18 years old. He actually wasn't in college yet. It was in June, right before he got there. And my dream was to be a professional cyclist. But I don't know if anybody listens or knows, I know you know this, but cyclists don't make a lot of money. There's been some controversy and some stories about the NBA and how much, Caitlin Clark is making. Well, I tell you what Caitlin Clark is going to make is a king's ransom compared to what most pros make in cycling. So because of that, I said, hey, I gotta get an education. I have to have a backup plan, after I go pro. So my whole plan was to go to college, get a degree, go pro, figure out what I want to do, and then probably go back and, and get a grad degree or start my own business or do something like that. But I actually got a degree in biomechanical engineering, and I got in-state tuition, which is one of the reasons that I chose that path. I was always very interested in physiology, But I knew very quickly that I didn't want to be an engineer. And again, I wanted to be a pro. But after my friend died, Dave, I spent another year racing my bike, and I was a Category 1 cyclist. And again, for those of you that know, if you're a Category 1, you're basically a pro. You race with the pros. Our team raced with the pros. We were an amateur team. You get paid like the pros do, which is kind of cool, like in prize money. And a lot of amateur teams that are Cat 1 level get stipends. So I got free equipment, bikes, clothing. We had team cars, with gas cards that we got to drive around. Food was provided for us. It was awesome, especially as a college kid. But when I went back to school that summer after my friend passed away, and I continued to race, what I realized was, as I came to the end of that second summer, was that my passion was gone for the sport. And I realized, like, deep down, that I was meant to do more in life than like ride my bike around in circles. And it's fun. Like, it's fun to ride bikes, but it's also kind of a selfish endeavor to be a professional athlete for anybody that's done it. It's highly admirable. I think that anybody that has the opportunity should do it, because it's a privilege in terms of the talent and the opportunity we have specifically in this country. But I wasn't that good. I would have been like an okay pro. So I got back to school that year. I was going into my junior year, and I sold all my stuff. I quit. And I said, you know what? I do not want to pass up an opportunity to really experience life. And I felt like I not only owed it to myself, because I had this life that I was given, but I owed it to my friend Chris, who had passed away, because he didn't have that opportunity anymore. So I felt like it was up to me to live life for the two of us. And one of the realities that we have in this world is that if you don't have money, you're limited in your options that you have out there. And whether that is, like sending my son to this school because he has a dream to play D1 lacrosse in college. So it's the best school here in the Asheville area for lacrosse. Whether it is my friend that I had lunch with today, he's feeling a little under the weather. I took him to get an IV vitamin drip. Being able to give somebody, the opportunity to do that to improve his health. It was his birthday. So I was like, here's your birthday present. You're getting stuck with a needle, or if it's just to work less, to spend more time with the people that you love or care about or volunteer, you need money to do that. So I set off on this journey to learn about how to invest. And my first foray into quote unquote investing was day trading in the stock market. And I'll tell you what, after doing that for about a year and losing more sleep than I lost when we had our children, over the stress of it all, I said, this is not investing. So I read over 250 books, actually got an MBA in portfolio management. So I stayed at Virginia Tech, and I actually worked for the university. So I got my degree paid for, my MBA paid for. And I said, you know what? The more I learned about real estate, I said, this is it. So I bought that first property. I bought the one next to me. So I lived in one. I did what would be called like a house hack. I bought the one next to me. So I had 6 units as a senior in college. So kind of my own little mini apartment building. And I built a little single family portfolio. And I said, you know what? All I have to do is pay these off over the next 10, 15 years. I got a job in medical device industry. And I said, that's it. I'll be free before I'm 40. And long story short, I learned about multifamily investing as an LP partner a little over 10 years ago. And we sold all of our single family rentals, Dave, within 2 years, and went full in that space. I tell my whole journey kind of in detail in my book, which if anybody that's listening wants a copy, you can get it at nextlevelincome.com. We'll even send you a free copy. So that brought us up to, the multifamily space. And then we did our first syndication in 2016. And we've done almost 50 syndications to this point across multifamily, self-storage, mobile home parks, as you and I were chatting about before the show here today, as well as express tunnel car washes.
Yeah, that's awesome, Chris. I really appreciate you sharing that story because I think, sadly, oftentimes people really need a wake-up call in life. Yeah. And whether it's the loss of a loved one, a chronic disease, or something that just really hits home for you. Yeah. Sometimes, we all just end up kind of reacting to life. So I think that's a really valuable lesson that you shared. And ideally, what we can try to do for the audience is try to help people get inspired, try to move the needle now and get the knowledge and take action today so you don't have to wait for that to happen. But that was incredible insight you had at such an early age. And I think back to 1999, right? That was literally the year that Rich Dad, Poor Dad had just come out. So
Yeah.
did you have some kind of, light bulb moment for you or something that said, hey, okay, I want to be free, but where's the how? How did you figure that out? Like, where did that come to you?
Yeah. And Rich Dad Poor Dad was one of those influential books that I read. And actually, I have a copy here in my. I got all my books in my cabinet back here to keep my shelf clean there. But Robert Kiyosaki himself gave me the book when I met him a few years ago, right before COVID started. And I was in a bookstore in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I was in the finance section. This is before. And I was listening to Audible books and that sort of thing. But I was reading about a book a week, so I was always constantly in bookstores and looking and seeing what to read. And I'll never forget, I was in the finance section of Barnes and Noble in Charlottesville, Virginia, and this guy looks over at the aisle, and I could see it like it was yesterday. He looks at me, looked to my left, and he's like, "Are you looking for something to read?" And he hands me Rich Dad Poor Dad. He goes, "You should read this book." And I was like, "Thanks." So I read it, and that's one of the reasons I went into the medical device field, Dave, because you couldn't have planned a better segue, is because Robert Kiyosaki said, hey, if you want access to the best investments out there, you need to be accredited, which means you need to make $200,000 or more as an individual or $300,000 or more as a couple. And I read all of his books. I read every single book that he came out with until now. He's got like 100 of them. So at some point I stopped. I wasn't able to keep up. But I read multiple other books. There was one, and I forget the gentleman's name that wrote it, called Buy and Hold. And he just talked about the power of real estate and how you didn't have to trade in and out of real estate. You just buy it. It will most likely appreciate over time. There were multiple others that, I kind of pulled things from, like buy a property that's cash flow positive. Make sure it has appropriate, low enough leverage on it. So, you're not over leveraged. So like say 70% or less. Have adequate cash reserves that you have that. And I really fell in love with the value add strategy in real estate, which has been kind of the bread and butter of what we do over time. If you don't mind, I do want to elaborate real quick, because you mentioned that insight at a young age. And there's a saying, pain leads to purpose. And I think, the pain that I experienced helped me develop this purpose and this passion that I have for helping others, as you do, on their journey towards financial independence. But I'll never forget another book I read, which was Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And in it, he talks about desirable difficulties. So basically how successful people have, an inordinate number of those successful people have faced something extremely difficult early on in life, namely the loss of typically a parent. And he outlines this and talks about, those things. And, I'm an engineer by education, and I think kind of in numbers and equations. And what I would say is when we're young, and I think a lot of people can appreciate this, I certainly thought this way. When you're young, you feel like you're invincible, right? You feel like I can do whatever I want. I'm riding bikes, I fall off, I crash, I got hit by a car one time. You just don't really think about your own mortality, But when my friend died, and I got to tell you, my father also died when I was 5, but it wasn't the same impression in my brain because I don't think I was old enough to fully get it. But when my friend died, it was like, holy cow, he was 18 years old. Like that's like the height of immortality. You're a young, virile young man, racing bicycles. We were like joking around that morning, just in the car goofing off. And it's like, how could this happen? And if you think you're going to live forever, and time, the value of your time is an equation, right? So you have time, and then you have how long you're going to live on the bottom. If that number is infinity, right? You think you're going to live forever, infinity, the value in that equation is essentially zero. So you don't really value every day. But as soon as you place a value on that number that you're going to live, whether it's 10 more years or 100 more years, every day becomes infinitely more valuable compared to when you thought you were going to live forever. And that's what happened in my brain. I said, wait a minute, like I have got to get busy living and stop wasting time.
Yeah, it's so spot on, Chris. Such important lessons, and it really resonates. For me, I was, when I was in the Marines, and 22 years old, and here I am responsible for 45 people, their lives, millions of dollars of equipment, and then getting into my first combat experience in Somalia and getting shot at, and seeing that is like, yeah, it changes your mind forever. And, every day I wake up with gratitude, to
Absolutely.
be here and everything. So really appreciate you sharing that story, because it just, it really, this is what it's all about, Chris, right?
Yeah.
It's all about people. Wealth is just, money is just a means of exchange, right? To do the things that you want to do. But as you pointed out, right, we've got this short lifespan. So how can we, really take the reins of it, be in control, and live every day to our best? How can we create an impact, right? Because it's not about the numbers in your bank account, right? It's just living your best life. But so many people are missing that. So really great story. Why don't we transition now into something, technical for folks, right? You studied portfolio management. I know you're into a lot of different asset classes. And we love to talk about really wealth strategy. So do you have a particular, investment thesis or focus area that you could share?
Yeah. So I think, look, in reality, if you look at my if an investor said, to me, hey, Chris, like, how should I allocate my funds? I would not recommend the way I do it, because my portfolio is built around my business, right? The majority of my wealth is around my business, which is real estate. So, after doing this for, nearly 10 years, that's kind of an outweighted size. So I think first off, what I did, Dave, is I said, okay, if you go to school, you study portfolio management, and then what you realize very quickly is that the financial industry is not really built to teach people how to be wealthy. It's built to sell financial products. And I was like, well, wait, I don't want to go be a salesperson. Like, I want to be wealthy. And I also looked at becoming a doctor at one point. So biomechanical engineering, it's kind of a pre-med track program. One of my classmates was pre-med. But I spent 18 years in the medical device space. I was in thousands of surgeries. And the reality is, you don't want to have surgery. Well, if you don't want to have surgery, you don't talk to a surgeon, right? A surgeon is who's going to help you. So it's very similar to the financial world. The medical world is set up to treat people that are already sick, that already have problems. And it's not set to prevent people from becoming sick or having surgery. It's sent to actually to treat those people that are there. So you have to go find a different type of professional if you want to avoid that. So I actually work with a personalized medical team, a doctor that helps keep me healthy. It's the same thing in the financial world. If you want to be rich, you don't listen to Dave Ramsey. You don't listen to your financial advisor that's not rich, because if they're not rich, how are they going to really teach you how to be rich? So as I looked at the financial world, and I was seeing these similarities between the financial world and the medical world, I said, well, wait a minute, like how do the wealthiest families actually manage their money? So I'm not talking about somebody that's a millionaire. I read The Millionaire Next Door. I read all Tom Stanley's books, great books. But I was like, that's not true wealth. True wealth, these families that are worth 30, 50, 100 million and more. When I looked at how they really allocated their wealth, like a family office, they didn't allocate it like somebody that has a 401k. As a matter of fact, they didn't even use qualified retirement plans. They used things like cash value life insurance. So I started learning about these different strategies. So, if you're listening and you're not me or Dave, and you don't have a massive real estate portfolio, I think the first thing is to say, well, what is a more effective strategy that's going to look more, like endowments or these wealthy families? And instead of having, say, 80%, 60 to 80% of your wealth in stocks, it's probably going to look more like 20 or 30%. And then you're going to have, say, 20 or 30% in cash flow real estate. So that was the first thing that I learned about, because I said, well, wait a minute, I can invest in the stock market. I learned about that. And I still have a small allocation in the stock market. Don't get me wrong. And I've taught my boys about that. But you can control the value of a piece of real estate that you buy, and then you can control the value of a piece of real estate through negotiation on the front end. So you can control the value which you buy it at through negotiation. You can control the value of a piece of real estate as you own it through capital improvements, for instance, or increasing net operating income. And then you can also manage the tax implications of your real estate by doing things like cost segregation and those sorts of things. So I said, all right, I'm going to learn as much as I can about commercial real estate. And then I started to learn about, I mentioned cash value life, like overfunded cash value life insurance. And as I learned about that, and I came upon this as soon as I found out my wife was pregnant, Dave. So I said, wait a minute, like, why would I start a 529 plan where I'm going to have these restrictions just like a qualified plan? So I said, why don't I talk to my wife? I said, why don't we start life insurance policies so we have a guaranteed amount of value so we know for a fact. And again, like investments, they don't say guarantee, right? But a life insurance contract has a guaranteed value at different periods of time, depending on what your premium payments are. I really like that because I wanted to guarantee that my son would have a certain amount of cash available to help him with his college journey. And by the way, I'll lend him that money. I'm not going to give it to him. So that's one thing we like to talk about, is teaching our children some of these same strategies as well. But then if something happened to me like it did my father, he would also be guaranteed an amount of money as my wife would to take care of them. And the first thing I did when I learned about that is I basically shifted my allocation, my portfolio from bonds to cash value real estate, because today we're getting about a 5.75% tax-free return inside of our policies. And life insurance companies invest in things like high quality bonds, high quality real estate, things that have nice stable income. And then the other thing that rich families do, they make their money typically in business or real estate. So I said, okay, let's really learn how to become a business owner. And that's one of the things that Robert Kiyosaki talks about in his book. He says, if you want to learn a skill to be a good business owner, learn the structure of businesses, learn about accounting, but he also said, learn about sales. So I went into the sales field as well. And Robert Kiyosaki was instrumental, as I kind of had a propensity to do that already. But kind of in summary, instead of doing what traditional financial advisors tell you, look at what the rich do. Look at income producing real estate. Look at things like cash value life insurance, and then learn how to be a business owner, and either start a business yourself, have your spouse start one. But even if it's a small business, it could even be one that you do with your children. That's something that could really help you generate, maybe it's just some additional income to invest, or it could generate truly life-changing wealth as well.
What if everything you thought you knew about investing was wrong? Would you like to create a wealth strategy like the top 1% have, and get exclusive access to top private equity deals that provide downside protection, tax efficiency, predictable cash flow, and have a lucrative upside? Discover how with the Pantheon Advantage, and join our investor club today at pantheoninvest.com. Yeah. I mean, if you're in the top 1% or you're gunning for the top 1%, why would you take advice from a 99%? I mean, it's really that simple, right? In anything that you're in, if you're looking for a coach, a mentor, an advisor, or something, you need people who've actually done it.
Right.
But actually the statistic is a little bit scary, right? So 88%, according to Spiva, 88% of all financial advisors actually can't even beat the S&P 500.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you, given that advice and everything? So anyway, appreciate that around, portfolio, kind of how you think about it too. Yeah. And, I really like how you framed also, cash value life insurance, right? And we talk about that as a strategy a lot as well. And I see it, it's like right now there's so much uncertainty in the world.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
We've got an election coming up. Who knows what's happening with the market? You have all these things. So if you think about your portfolio also, just for a moment, forget about all the shiny objects and the different tools, right? But just try to bifurcate between, where do I need certainty? Like how much certainty do I need? Right. Yep. And then look at putting it into the vehicle. So for some people, they might be, maybe they're a surgeon and they've got great job security. They're not really worried about cash flow. Right. So that's
Yeah.
less important. They're worried about taxes or something like that, right? So I think it's really important, and it's very unique to everyone in terms of what you're looking for. But where you can take uncertainty and create certainty is just, it's huge, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like we talk about like the next level income strategy, and with our coaching program, I was just talking to a friend of a coaching client yesterday, or maybe it was 2 days ago here at this point. But he's making, with he and his wife, close to $500,000. Like, they're doing very well, and he's asking about investments. But I asked him some questions, and I said, "Well, you're doing a great job making money," and we say make, keep, and grow. Well, if you're not keeping money, if you don't have the right tax strategy in place, he's just paying, 25, 30% in taxes every year. He has no tax strategy, no system around that, doesn't look at it like at that lens through his investments. So I said, that's your low hanging fruit right there, is to go out and look at some different tax strategies that can help you lower that tax bill. And then the second thing I said, Dave, was, he's just got married. He wants to start a family. They're working on that. I said, and I explained the same story I just told, which was, investigate life insurance and how that can give you some certainty in your life. Because, if something does happen, it can help provide some certainty for your family. Again, it also has, like, that's kind of the base of our financial pyramid, if you will. Because I know if all else fails, we're going to have the cash value in those policies, as well as the death benefit. Hopefully many, many years away from now. But still that's there as well. And again, I think that's kind of a little bit backwards, from the way most people think, because they think, hey, I'm gonna, I'm gonna put my money in my 401k. I got to pay taxes and do that. They don't even think about tax strategy or looking at things like we were talking about life insurance. It's like, well, why would I want to pay tax and then put my money into a life insurance policy? And it's like, well, yeah, but if you got a policy and your heirs are getting a tax-free death benefit, that's a massive difference, right? So it's much different, like you were saying, than most people in the traditional financial world look at things.
What's been your biggest mistake in investing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think as you get away from like the stock market and you look at real estate and you look at syndications or you look at businesses, they all have a business component, and a business has somebody that's operating that business, right? So when you look at those things, you can say, okay, who am I really partnering with? And any business owner, any manager, so if you're listening and you manage people or you have a team, as you did, Dave, it's the people. It's the trust that you have with the people and the expertise that those people have and that they're doing. So, I mean, I could talk to you about how this investment lost money during COVID because it was a small business lending fund, and those sorts of things. But, what lessons do you really learn from, kind of these black swan events? I think the biggest challenges that I've faced, I had a failed partnership early in my real estate career. And the issue was that I partnered with somebody that didn't have the right mentality. They had a scarcity mentality. And, with a scarcity mentality, you're not thinking about, growing the pie for other people. You're not looking at the opportunity that's out there. You have kind of a very selfish perspective and that sort of thing. So I would call that a big mistake. It really undid, several years of growth that I had up until that point. I had to retool. It was also a tremendous blessing in a lot of ways, as a lot of failures or challenges are in life, as we've already kind of talked about. So what did I learn from that? I learned that you can't overlook certain things that may not seem consequential to business, because at the end of the day, those things that are a little bit more nebulous, like, again, that abundance mentality can really sink an entire ship if you have somebody that is so focused on, loss and worried about, personal gain and that sort of thing. So I think as you are going and looking for, whether it's, a partner or a syndicator, for an investment, or a business partner, you have to really look at the people that you're partnering with and make sure that not only do they have the right skill set, but they have the right mentality, and you align philosophically as well.
Yeah, that's a great insight. And I think one thing to share with listeners is that, set your expectations up front, right?
Yeah.
All investing has risk, and not everything is going to go right. And if you understand that very early on, you're going to do that much better. So realize that
100%.
a portion of your portfolio is not going to work out, no matter how great the sponsor, the track record, and all of those kind of things. I mean, I can literally remember having blue chip stock of Kodak that we had for a while that is safe as you can get, in pension funds, everything else, and they go bankrupt.
Yeah, part of the Dow.
Right? So
yeah.
Exactly. Right. So it's out there, and I think it's savvy investors know you're not going to win everything, but that's why having a strategy in place is really going to kind of minimize the impact, from the times that it's not going to work out for you.
And to that point, Dave, I'm glad you said that. You talking about things not working out, and look, it's and again, you've actually been in battle, and what you want to think is like, would I want to go through a challenging time? Would I want to go to battle with this individual? So the office I'm sitting in is on the third story of our home, and my wife's an architect. So I bought this lot over 10 years ago. We built what's our dream home for our family to grow up in here with my boys now 12 and 14. And we live in Asheville, North Carolina. My wife being an architect and having built spec homes here, we know a dozen wonderful builders. There's great builders here in Asheville, true craftsmen. But the person we chose to build our home, you could say, oh, well, this person could build a better home, or this. We chose to work with our builder because he became a personal friend of ours. But we went through some challenges with some of our other properties that we built, and we knew what the situation would be dealing with him personally when something went wrong. And I said, hey, it's going to take us 3 years from breaking ground to finish this property. When and if something does happen, I know that we're going to be able to work through this situation. So I didn't say, hey, let me find the builder that I don't think I'm going to have any problems with ever. I said, let me find a pool of the best builders. Let me pick the one that I know that I can trust when something inevitably does happen, so that we can work through it together. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, and to your point, Dave, you say, okay, I know things aren't going to work out at some point, somehow. I can't predict it, because if you could, you wouldn't do it, right? So, but you have to say, okay, if something does go wrong, do I trust that I can work through that situation with this person? And that's really what I think you should look for, in partners, in sponsors, in general partners, and those sorts of things, which is, hey, is this the type of person that has the right mentality, the right value system, so that when something does occur, that we're going to be able to work through it in a moral and mutually beneficial way.
Chris, what does your morning routine look like?
Well, it depends. So I jokingly say that. Look over. I got a little Vizsla over here. Her name's Lucy, and she's my morning kryptonite. So some mornings my wife beats me out of bed and she makes coffee, and I kind of wait, and I kind of listen. I can hear the coffee machine going off. We usually get up at 5 o'clock. I get up at 4:55. But if Lucy beats me out of bed, my dog, and she jumps back in bed, sometimes she coaxes me to stay in bed a little longer. But typically I get up at 4:55, feed the dog, get some coffee. I mentioned I work with a personalized doctor. And when we did our evaluation back in 2016, I went in for my first consultation. I'm like, oh, what's he going to prescribe me? Because I don't like drugs and I don't like to be on medications and these things. I'm thinking like, so he goes through everything. And you know what he prescribed me? He prescribed me meditation. He said, Chris, you need to meditate. You need to slow your brain down a little bit. Yeah. He's like, you got a Ferrari engine, but you're in the red. You got to slow it down so you can get the full capacity from it. So I started a meditation practice at that time. So I try to start my day, get up, spend about 30 minutes getting a cup of coffee, meditating, just saying to myself what I'm grateful for. And then I usually work for an hour to an hour and a half after that. And this is a strategy that I learned from one of my coaches, Craig Ballantyne. And that's how I wrote my book. I wrote my book in 12 weeks. And I did it because I got up and I wrote for 60 to 90 minutes every morning. So I wrote basically a chapter every morning until it was done. And I've maintained that practice to this day. And that is one of the big shifts I did from when I was racing because I did race up until I was about 35. I'd get up and I'd do intervals in the morning or do a hard training session, typically inside. And I sacrificed those workouts for my work now to be more productive. Because what I found was if I did a really intense workout first thing in the morning, it would erode my mental performance. So now I kind of use my workout mid-morning, late morning. Sometimes I take like a lunch break and I'll go work out or go for a bike ride. It gets two benefits. One, it helps me restart my day. And two, there's not a lot of traffic on the roads between, like 11 and 1, compared to in the morning or in the afternoon.
All right, guys, that's the miracle morning right there. Love it. And including intervals. Usually when I talk about interval training, nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. But
it's self-inflicted torture is
it really
for anybody
is.
that doesn't know what intervals are. Yeah.
Doing VO2 intervals is being in the pain box.
That's right. Absolutely. But super effective.
Yeah. Chris, if you could give just one piece of advice to the listeners about how they could really accelerate their wealth trajectories, what would it be?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm going to shift this a little bit, okay? Because I think that life is an energy game. And, with our coaching clients, we talk a lot about money, but the first thing we talk about is health. So if I could tell you, hey, I can help you live 20 years longer, that's 20 more years your money can compound, right? If I could give you an extra hour or 2 hours in your day, that's time that you can listen to this podcast with Dave. That's time that you can read a book, that you could look at different investment strategies. So what I would say is that let me help you prioritize your time. On our blog, I wrote about, and I can send you this, Dave, if you want to put it in the show notes, how to create 20 to 40 more hours a week. So if you're like, Chris, this all sounds great, Dave, this is amazing. I'm busy. I got kids. I got a career. I got a 9-to-5 job. I can't learn about all this stuff. Plan your weeks. Number one, put your non-negotiables down. The time you sleep, the time you work out, the time you spend with your children and your families. I just told Dave before this podcast, I'm picking up my son here in 15 minutes. I'm going to take him to a lacrosse practice. Put all that down. Then put the things that are going to move your financial picture the most. That may be something in your career that's going to help make you another $50,000 or $100,000 this year. It may be evaluating that first syndication. So maybe in your time in the morning, that first 30 minutes is spent looking at a deal every day or educating yourself. But at some point, you have to take action. Once you have those non-negotiables and those things that are going to move the needle the most, let everything else fall in there and get rid of social media. Don't worry about the news or the next election or, even your sports teams until you have done all those things, and then reward yourself with those pleasures afterwards. And I think, Dave, that if people structure their days and their weeks and their lives like that, they're going to find that extra 10, 20, even 40 hours a week to move that financial needle that much further.
Yeah. 100% agree with that. You could have all the dreams in the world, but if you don't have your health, you've only got one. So
that's right.
That is a massive move, right? Investing in yourself. So
absolutely.
Love it, Chris. So many good insights. Always such a pleasure to connect, and really appreciate your time. And if people want to connect with you, grab your book. We'll definitely put everything in the show notes, but best places for people to reach out.
Yeah, check out our website, nextlevelincome.com. You can listen and subscribe to our podcast there. You can get a free copy of our book there. I mentioned how a big passion of mine is helping to educate our next generation as well. Check out nextlevelincome.com/kids. We got a free chapter in a children's book that, it's a parenting book kind of about children, but nextlevelincome.com/kids. And you got our 5 tips on how to teach your children how to be money pros. All that is free. If you want to learn more about our investments, you can also click on the invest link and schedule a time to talk with our team as well.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Chris.
Dave, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wealth Strategy Secrets. If you'd like to get a free copy of the book, go to holisticwealthstrategy.com. That's holisticwealthstrategy.com. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming opportunities at Pantheon, please visit pantheoninvest.com. That's pantheoninvest.com.